Welcome back to Viewmasters. We are back for real. And this October, Rusty, we're going back to our horror roots.
Been long awaited.
Long awaited. Everything this month is going to be a horror release. But before we go on, please rate and review the show. Follow us on Instagram and Twitter at Viewmasters Podcast or Viewmasters Pod. You'll find us.
Wow, you're plugging us. Nice.
I am plugging us. And our film today is The Descent, a great movie, Rusty. And but before we go on, there's some huge news I have to announce.
Oh, I love the breaking news.
Rusty and Jen are going to have a baby.
Wow, that is big news.
That is big news.
I like hearing it. Crazy to go into the appointments and just to see, like in the sonogram, just the little baby wiggling around.
Wow, that's moving to hear about. But I do have some bad news about it, Rusty.
Uh-oh. Tell me more.
Satan is his father.
Is that true? Is that breaking news as well to me?
Please pass on this message to Jen, because there is a silver lining.
He chose you out of all the world, out of all the women in the whole world, he chose you.
All right, if there's a positive in all this, that's it. That she was the chosen one. If that was true, I don't know how I would take that news, because it would be kind of cool in a way. Imagine having that power at your disposal.
Oh my God, the kid would be huge on Twitch.
Oh, and if it could do anything for my hair, then it's truly a blessing.
I have some possible names to run by you. How about rate and review? Or you could do like a subtle video game reference. Like NBA Jam Stark.
That's very subtle. No one would even think about that.
Checking into a hotel and it's like NBA J Stark. Can I ask you, does the J stand for? It's like, oh yes, Jam. It stands for Jam.
Oh boy. You know what the crazy thing is with the whole pregnancy thing is looking at baby stuff, just like shit that you're going to eventually have to buy.
Oh, tell me about it. I already own all that stuff.
Go on. What do you mean by that?
That's the line in my Bumble profile. I was like, I already own all the baby stuff. And I don't understand. It doesn't draw them in.
That might be the creepiest thing, reading that in a profile.
In fact, sometimes I go up and down my hallway in my apartment, pushing around an empty stroller. And when I see my neighbors, I grab them and I say, "Have you seen my baby?" The fucked up thing is I got elected to the condo board. People were like, that guy's whole platform is, "Have you seen my baby?" What am I even saying?
I don't know.
Before we go on, actually, Rusty, I have one last hair update.
Oh, good.
So this is our first episode back in America and back in real life. And I told you that I was going to try to get a haircut at the barber that I mentioned a while ago. The barber who first told me that I was balding, the Australian guy who was like, "You're going a bit thin up there."
That's for some faithful listeners now, because I have no idea what episodes that's on.
Some people have actually referenced this story to me. But so I thought it would be funny to go back and talk to him again and record it. And I went back to the barbershop, and a few days in a row, actually. This is, you can imagine my life here. And every time it was just too crowded inside. So I just kept walking past that barber, looking in the window. And like he would like look up at me, and I just like look away, and it was like raining. And it felt like an 80s love song.
Look away, baby, look away.
Now, this is a movie about 6 women who go into a cave, but it was directed by a man, Neil Marshall.
I don't know much about Neil Marshall.
He, it's hard to peg where he is at in his career. He had Hellboy recently. It was kind of a bomb. He directed some big episodes of Game of Thrones, but never really came back to that. He's been attached to tons of big movies that haven't happened. But I got to tell you, I almost had his dog.
Really?
Bria Grant, one day, she was on the Basket Case episode. One day I was with her and she was like, "Hey, you're looking for a dog. Neil Marshall has to get rid of his dog. Like, do you want this dog?" And I was like, "Oh man, to have Neil Marshall's dog, that'd be a thrill." Then I was like, that'd be kind of such a random thing to mention. You're like, and it's the dog of the guy who directed The Descent.
Is that a niche audience for who could share that with? I guess it would be big on social media, right?
Well, I would never go on social media and be like, here's Neil Marshall's dog.
It's their own secret. Now,
that would seem like, I mean, like at the dog park. I'd be like, that's actually.
he did direct a movie called Dog Soldier, so technically you could be that dog soldier.
I can't believe I forgot about that because that makes it, I should have gotten the dog. Fuck. Another regret. Throw it on the pile. Let's quickly move on to the cast, Rusty. Sean McDonald. You may not know that she played a resistance pilot in The Last Jedi.
Well, you do love The Last Jedi for everyone out there.
Some of the other cast, Rusty, Nora Jane Nooney.
Mm-hmm.
According to the audio commentary on the special edition DVD, there was an exact replica made of her head. And after the film was finished, she got to keep the head. Once she put it in her mother's freezer as a joke.
It killed her. I have to say, though, with this cast, I'm not really familiar with that many of the actresses in this movie.
Me either.
I recognize Holly, and that's about it, but I don't know where I recognize her from.
Oh, that's amazing content.
Well, what do you have? Add something to this.
Well, every actress is from a different country.
Yeah. The funny thing about that, though, is Juno, played by Natalie Mendoza, she is actually not American, and she plays an American in the movie. She's actually British-Australian.
And I believe she was born in Hong Kong.
Yeah.
Rusty, ask her where in the world Carmen Sandiego is. You'll finally get a straight answer. Rusty, when this film starts out, it starts out with them whitewater rafting. That was all them.
I know that them. I did see that as well. The movie, obviously, about, like you said, 6 adventurers that go into a cave spelunking.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know about you, but this plays on one of my biggest fears of claustrophobia and darkness. Now, I feel like they were not packed for this expedition, that they should have brought some Vaseline just in case they got stuck, and some handguns just in case they needed to commit suicide.
That's the gear. That's the gear you would have them bring.
That's the gear I would bring. I said to Jen, like, it's a fear of mine, like watching this movie and anything else like that. But I would never, ever be in this situation. I would never go cave spelunking. Do you think your mind would play tricks on you, especially in that kind of darkness in tight spaces?
I think my mind's already playing tricks on me. Maybe I'll go down there. I'll go down there and be normal.
You would just eventually evolve into one of the crawlers in this movie.
Oh yeah, no, you haven't seen me lately. I look like a crawler now. I just hissed at my neighbor who I saw in the hallway.
Oh man, you know what I wonder about this movie?
What do you wonder about it?
Late 90s, there was a lot of those lost footage films.
Found footage. All
right, wait, hold on, let me start that over.
Lost footage is actually a whole different genre. Like, I had all my great work, unfortunately, lost footage.
I had found footage written down.
That just reminded me, I don't know if I ever told this story before, but Megan Hensley, who you've met, recently starred in the game Astral Chain for Switch.
What's that?
It's like a role-playing game, but she's like one of the voices in it. Yeah. But she once told me a story that I always think about and laugh. She's from Iowa and like a very, I don't say gullible, but like, like, oh, shucks kind of person. And she somehow, this old, like creepy filmmaker guy in like Oregon lured her and her friends to like his house. And I don't think he had any like sexual designs on them, but like it was definitely like a creepy situation because they were staying in this guy's house who said he was making a movie, but there was like no movie taking place. And it was just him and his wife, like preaching to them about like this weird religion they were into. But at one point, like he got like a phone call and then he came back from the phone call and he's like, movie studios calling me all day. They want me to make Casablanca too. They want me to make Casablanca too.
I have more things to pick.
But lost footage. Yeah.
Yeah. I actually wrote down found footage too, and I said lost footage. I hate myself. But anyways, so you know how in the late 90s there were a lot of found footage.
He's
films?
So scared of the genre he can't even say it.
Sarah, you have to calm down.
I have a game for you.
Oh, okay.
Before we jump into this movie, it's called Alternate Titles.
Alternate
So,
titles.
I have a list of titles for you. Some
Okay.
have been associated with the film, and others I made up. And it's up to you to decide which ones are which. All right, let's start it. Ready? The first one, Descent into Madness. Start easy.
I will say that is a real title.
It is made up by me.
Wow. Okay.
This one you probably will get. Let's see. Descent into Hell.
A real one.
That's correct. It was the Danish title of the film.
Okay.
Are you enjoying this so far?
Yes, love it.
Okay. Crawl Space.
I'm gonna say it's real.
That was the working title.
Okay.
All right. Chicks.
Crawl Space has to be human made. I don't like that title, but Chicks with Picks. I read that was actually like a joke title. So yeah.
I like that I only ever said chicks, and I didn't even think you heard me, and you knew what I was going to say. But obviously, you looked at IMDb.
Yes, I did. Let's hear the next one.
Okay. Revenge is a dish best served cold and in the dark.
I feel like that one is weird enough that you would not have made it up, and so I think it's real.
It's made up. Made it
Fuck.
up for you. I can't believe you fell for that with an added and in the dark. The Dark.
I'll say that's real.
That was the original script title. And then finally, my last one. All right, this one's a tough one. Let's see. My Dinner with Ed and Rusty.
Oh wow, I think that's made up. I think that's made up. So we open with the whitewater rafting. We get that this group they've gone on all this kind of adventures before. We see Sarah, who is our lead, getting picked up by her husband, but we also see that he's got some romance going with Juno.
Yeah, very obvious.
Sarah and the husband kind of have this tense drive with the daughter. And I remember when I first saw this in the theater, this moment shocked me. And then there's a sudden head-on collision. And these poles from the oncoming truck or whatever it is pierce the windshield and kill the father and daughter. Rusty, my question for you is, who gets to keep those poles after an accident like that? Do they just say, fuck it?
Depending on the country, it's usually finders keepers.
I guess so. Wow.
You know, what
I know exactly what you're going to say. I know what you're going to say. You're going to say that those poles would not kill the people.
No, that's
copper
actually
is too soft.
That's incorrect. A projectile
Really?
at that speed? Forget about it.
Really?
I was actually watching, and I can't remember. Was it Ripley's Believe It or Not? Or one of those weird shows back in the day. But that happened to a couple that was driving, and the pole actually went through the person's chest, came out the other side, but missed every organ and wound up surviving. But one of those long poles actually, with the kind of force, went through their body and through the seat.
Wow. You know, that's the person who should have adopted Neil Marshall's dog. What a conversation they could have at the dog park.
Yeah, throughout this podcast or this episode, I'm going to presuppose that Sarah's the killer the entire time. That's one of the theories out there, but I'm going to maintain that because I'm a believer in that one. I like that idea. I mean, there's some things that would make that not true, just by the way the crew or the people that interact with the crawlers. But I think there's a way we can explain that, and I think we'll get to that going through this.
You know, it's almost comical if your friend has been through this tragedy and you've always done adventures, that the one you suggest is going to be going into a dark, fucking scary cave instead of like all the things you could do, like go skiing, go skydiving. Those seem more like life affirming, like looking at the sun kind of things.
Yeah.
Going in a cave.
Well, that's why I think I'm even going to take the stance that maybe that's all a part of our imagination in the hospital.
Yes, that is another fan theory about this film, which also kind of could be true.
You know, it's a moment that's kind of, I think everybody could relate to at some point in their life, when Sarah and her husband are in the car and she kind of says to the husband, why are you being so distant?
Mm-hmm.
And he's just quiet for that second. I think we've all been there, right? When a relationship has ended, it's just a moment before one of the people just say like, oh, I want to leave you, or I want to divorce, or whatever. And you just know, you could feel that moment coming, especially if you're not aware of it. Like Sarah seemed aware, but it wasn't cemented yet. But in the end, you got to confront it.
Are you okay? You seem a bit distant.
I'm fine.
Rusty, the scene in the hospital when Sarah is recovering from the accident and she kind of has nightmares. This is like one of the only moments of the movie I don't love, just because I feel like this was kind of forced on the movie, where it was like, oh, you got to put some horror imagery up front so we know that it's a horror movie,
Yeah.
even though it's kind of like fake nightmare stuff. But I will tell you one thing, a little trivia I found out: the hospital scene contained 30 extras. Now, this was voted not interesting on IMDb.
Yeah. Well, I mean, the one thing you could say about the hospital scene, though, which makes me think that maybe she never left the hospital, was based on those dreams that she was already being consumed by the darkness, that it was closing in on her. And in the end of the movie, I mean, she's encapsulated by the darkness. So basically, maybe her family, her husband and her kid are still alive and moved on and just left her there. Maybe she was in a coma, or maybe she's got brain damage.
Out of all the theories there's no way that there's a theory where her daughter and husband are still alive. I mean, we saw them get impaled.
Well, maybe she blacked out and just had dreams of that. maybe. Wait, let me take it a step backwards. Maybe she's still at home in bed and dreamed about the whitewater rafting trip.
No, maybe she drowned on that trip, and this whole thing is her death dream.
Maybe she's just a fetus having a dream inside her mother's belly.
Maybe she's your fetus.
Satan is his father.
I like that.
What else do you have to say about this hospital scene? This hospital scene looks a lot like the year it was made in. You're like, this is a film from the year 2005.
The whole movie kind of looks like it was made in 2005.
Yeah, definitely.
The way the shots are and the movement of the camera, it just is like, oh, this is 2005. Like the way 28 Days Later is exactly looks like when that came out.
Oh my God, 28 Days Later. That movie is so 2003. Last time I watched it, I invaded Iraq.
Wait, isn't that movie from 2002?
28 Days Later, man, that movie is so 2002. Last time I watched it, I was literally attacked by the clones.
I like it.
I don't like sand.
Do you think that, say she survived and she has a bit of a resentment for her husband that passed away, that maybe the Crawlers is based on men in general, just because she feels so betrayed by them, that they are kind of disgusting creatures?
I think that's totally intended. I don't even think that's subtext. I think that is text.
I mean, look at Phil Collins when he got divorced. He was writing songs about that, felt betrayed. So maybe this is the same thing she's doing.
Yes, look at Phil Collins, squint, and he might look like a crawler.
Yes, that's the analogy I was going for. But anyways, moving along. Where are we at? The cabin, the bonding scene.
The bonding scene works well.
And the introduction to the other three characters.
Okay,
yes.
Give me a smile.
The one thing, now we are introduced at the beginning with the whitewater rafting of the core three, which is Beth, Juno, and Sarah. Who are these other three characters? We know two of them are siblings, and one's just like a protege, in quotations, to Juno. But is like, my impression is that Becca is like one of their fourth.
Yeah, I think so.
Adventures. Okay. The one thing they hinted at, three of the characters being gay. Did you pick up on that?
No, I didn't.
I don't know if I read the scene wrong, but when they asked Holly how she knew Juno, or no, they asked Holly if she has a man, and she said she's a sports fuck like Juno, and Juno kind of smiles at her, and then she says Rebecca is too, and they all kind of laugh and giggle. I don't know if you get that reaction if it was based on just being a sports fuck, unless it's because of the terminology, but I read it as maybe there's more to their relationship.
All I know, Rusty, is this. When Sarah comes out in those pajamas and they all go crazy, those pajamas aren't even that dorky or anything.
I hate to correct you, but wasn't that Beth that came out in the pajamas?
Rusty,
Leave this.
One thing about this film is it was not shot in America, but it's supposed to be America. But as I've said before, I instantly know when something's not America. I was watching this, I was just like, not America, not America.
I wish I could say the same. I just assumed with those panning shots of the mountains and stuff. I'm just like, is that the Appalachian Mountains? Not sure.
I must have been a botanist in my former life, because I just knew that greenery was not ours.
What was the name of the area, the national park they were exploring? That they were
I'm not sure, but I feel like weren't they in Arkansas or North Carolina? North Carolina?
North Carolina. It was like Chattanooga, but I think it was made up. I don't know. Should have did some more fact checking before saying that. Did you like the jump scares though in this movie? Because when she looks out the window and she gets hit by the pole, that was supposed to make the audience jump. And there's other moments like that.
I'm like a little split on that because I feel like, if there was none of that, it would be maybe more effective. I don't know. But maybe it would just feel like a Robert Altman movie that suddenly has like weird bald monsters in it. But it just, those moments felt kind of fake to me.
I feel like since the monsters weren't introduced until 40 minutes into the movie, they needed something to remind you that it was a horror film.
Yeah. I feel like if that was Neil Marshall's 10th movie instead of like his second feature, I feel like that those wouldn't be there.
Yeah. I did hate the ending though with the last jump scare, but we'll get to that.
Whoa, that's getting way ahead of ourselves. First, we have to talk about when they're driving to the hole in the ground.
Juno, are you sure we're going the right way?
I've never been lost in my life.
Now, Rusty, they list two rules. Two rules on the way to the cave. They say, rule number 1, stick to the plan. Rule number 2, don't go wandering off. I wanted to know, what are your rules in life? I could go first.
Yeah.
And this is actually true from the heart. I only have one rule in life.
It's probably the same as mine. Avoid mirrors with bad lighting.
No, I only have one rule. Never, ever fall in love on the Jersey Shore.
Oh. Yeah, I have a confession. I'd never seen an episode of that.
I have a confession. I've seen them all multiple times.
I know. You used to love it. You used to marathon it with your roommate, right?
Yeah. Well, you got to watch. I watch Bad Reality with someone else because then it's really fun. You watch Bad Reality alone. To me, it feels sad.
I love it this time of year when the cats are here.
But anyways, didn't you love the scene though where they're heading towards the hole? That whole hike scene. I feel like I could have watched them traverse that terrain for hours. Like just make a feature length of that with the nature sounds. I think it's very like cathartic in a way.
Yeah, it was so green. I thought the cast of Excalibur was going to suddenly appear. Then they come across that dead deer. It's too bad that Holly died before Instagram. That photo could have been huge. So you're like, why is she taking photos of this?
Yeah. Well, her character was really annoying. I know they always need one of those types of characters that just does ridiculous, stupid things. But her character, man, like she was filming a lot of things, and the way she was like going through the caves, just irritating.
She was the Irish one, right?
Yes, she was.
Yeah, and she says that she's like, I ran out of places to base jump in Galway.
Yeah. Yep.
Rusty, I've been to Galway. I'll tell you about that. I've never gotten food poisoning in my life except for this one time. And my God, I destroyed this bathroom. It was like 11 a.m. Went into this hotel, like not in the room, like in the lobby of the hotel. And I just sprayed fucking vomit everywhere. There was vomit on the ceiling. It was like daddy daycare. And as I was leaving, a guy came in, and no one could have imagined that in Galway, Ireland, it's like a Sunday morning, the guy who just sprayed vomit everywhere, it had nothing to do with alcohol.
That's a good point. But what did you think you ate?
Oh, I'm pretty sure it was these oysters. They like looked weird and tasted weird. And I was like, well, but I've bought them, so I'm going to eat them.
Food poisoning is brutal. I've had it a couple of times in my life, but I never had the vomiting. I just had like diarrhea for like 5 days or 4 days. None of that for you, just projectile vomiting?
Well, no, then I had some coming out my ass as well. And please rate and review. But it was perfectly timed because I was supposed to see some relatives, and then so got to dodge that one. And as I recall, the NFL playoffs were on, and I just like laid in bed, and my then girlfriend could not handle being around vomit, so she was like, "I'm going to be out for the entire day." And I was like, "Oh, okay, cool." So it was actually kind of fun. I like laid in bed, read David Mitchell from Peep Show's memoir while watching the NFL playoffs and shitting and vomiting.
Is that quiet comfort enjoyment that you expected.
Yes. I
There's
mean,
nothing worse, though.
there's something, I don't know, like sometimes when you're really ill and you are like feel really weak, it's almost a fun feeling.
Yeah. Yeah, it's kind of like you said, like where you're just reading. It's just like, well, I can't do anything else, so I'm
Yeah.
just gonna enjoy this book that I'm reading. But the one thing that sucks is though, like when you just shit your brains out, you go lay down again, and you're just like, well, I'm shitting again now, and you have to get up like 30 seconds later.
Anyway, so they go to the hole in the ground, Rusty. And as you said, Beth, is that, why can't I remember her name? She's the one filming the whole time?
No, Holly.
Holly.
Initially Holly, but then Sarah takes over.
And yeah, that the quality of that footage really brings me back. It's like looks so bad.
Mhm.
You know?
Or just
And
to
we
see a
think
camcorder.
our footage now looks good. Like to your kid, it'll probably look like shit. He'll say, "Hey, Dad, what'd you shoot this on? An Atari 2600 pirate?"
It is an incredible thing when you see like Super Nintendo graphics, and at that time when they were out, you're like, you thought they were almost watching a real movie. Do you remember in the first TMNT game for NES, and there's that moment after you disable the bombs and shredders on the television, and like his hands moving back and forth, where it's supposed to give like a 3D effect? I don't know if you remember. I don't know how far you made into that game, but I thought those graphics was like watching a cartoon. Like I thought they were that good.
I remember when they threw the foot soldiers at the screen. I ducked every time. So, Rusty, they are descending into the tunnel.
Mm-hmm.
Now, I don't know if you know what I was going to bring up when we got to this section.
No, I don't.
And it's not ET for Atari, but I could if I wanted to.
That would be a good guess.
Do you remember the tunnel kind of thing that they used to have at Siemens Neck Park, a park in the town we grew up in, Seaford, Long Island? It was like a structure of all these boxes, like interconnected with tubes and stuff like that.
That was the most amazing playground toy, except that there was always dirtbags hanging out in it.
There always were. And it was like you would enter via these orange tubes that were completely, what's the word for you can't see through? Opaque.
Yeah.
And there's no way of knowing if you were going to come out of this tube awkwardly in the middle of like a teenage hangout and you just be like, oh.
I do remember crawling through them and going, because there was different tiers. So the higher you went, the more likely you would come across teenagers. And I decided to venture up into one of them, and there were teenagers in there, and they were cool to me. They were just like, "Hey, buddy," and I was just like, got scared and left. But yeah, that was a big fear of probably both of ours growing up, coming across teenagers.
Huge.
Like the metalheads.
It's funny though, because I feel like all the parks in our area, like also Wantar Park, which had like the maze and it had like the rocket ship and all these things. But even as a really little kid, I had the feeling that these structures were built like in some earlier like glory period. You know, they were like those big statues in Lord of the Rings that are like looking over them as they're coming down in the canoes. You just knew it wasn't your time. You were in the time of decay.
Do you know, we talked about a friend that we had growing up, a mutual friend, who was known for exaggerating or just flat out lying.
Mm-hmm.
And he told me that if you went into certain sections, you would get knifed. And of course, I believed it. So
it's like this playground equipment has like a bad neighborhood within it. It's like stay in the good side of town.
So we're in the cave.
Yes.
And we get the first glimpse of Sarah starting to break down because she kind of hears, or she thinks she hears, her daughter giggling.
Mm-hmm.
Now, leading up to the scene, though, Sarah popped some pills beforehand.
Yes.
Any idea what those pills were? Like,
this is a big under discussed thing that I watched a YouTube video about. Apparently, she's addicted to drugs at this point.
Oh, really?
And I'm not sure. No, I think they're like actual drugs that she's abusing. And I believe that those drugs cause hallucinations, is mentioned.
Don't some antidepressants cause hallucinations?
Yeah, they make you see crazy shit like a happy world.
I know. You know, one other thing with antidepressants and anti-anxiety medication. When I had severe anxiety back in my 20s, I had to go to the dentist for some major dentistry work, and I was really fearful. And I took Klonopin. I was prescribed Klonopin, and I took a dose that I wasn't quite used to. And they gave me an anesthetic, or maybe anesthesia. I'm not sure, or maybe the sweet air, but it did not mix well with the Klonopin, and I was tripping balls. Where I looked like I think I could have died, but I just looked like a junkie on Skid Row, where I was just sweating profusely. I was pale. It was a crazy experience.
Those were Rusty's hard times. In fact, there are some people who theorize that the whole film, The Descent, is all just a death dream Rusty had when he was at the dentist.
I like that. That's a good thing.
Like the first big kind of set piece after they go into the cave is like the claustrophobic tunnel, which the first time I saw it, man, that fucked me up. That was a great moment.
Yeah, that is what brings me to my next topic, which really got to me. Do you know the story of John Jones and the Nutty Putty Cave?
No, but I'm already horny.
Oh, you won't be horny after hearing this. When I first read about this and saw the images of what happened to this guy, I was sweating so much it like made me panic. Even though I know I would never be in this situation. But it happened at the Nutty Putty Cave in Utah. So anyways, there's this guy, John Jones, a 26-year-old. And on the eve of Thanksgiving in 2006, him and his family and some friends decide to explore this cave, and much to relive their spelunking days from when they were younger. So they thought would be a fun thing to do. So they go to this cave, and John finds this passage, which he thinks is called the birthing tunnel, which leads to an open area, which leads to a different exit of the cave. But it's a twisted passage that for his frame, he was 6 foot, 200 pounds, and it was really hard for him to get through. And I think he realized he made a mistake, but he couldn't go backwards because he was already stuck. So he had to go deeper. And eventually he got to this point where it dropped straight down. And he had no choice but to go through it because he thought he saw like a fissure at the bottom that would have opened up to another area. So he sucked in all the air in his chest and made his way down, only to exhale the air, which forced him to get trapped even more with his arms pinned, one on his chest and one behind him. Imagine being in that position, completely upside down.
I'm doing it right now. I don't even like it outside of a cave.
So he's stuck in this position. His brother finds him, realizes there's a fucking very tense situation, has to go for help, which is 30 minutes out of the cave. He knows time is against him because he's upside down. He's stuck. His life's at stake. So they try to do this rescue mission, and it's very difficult for them based on the way he's stuck, the way the cave is positioned, in that the fact that there's a lot of clay on the walls, but they're pulling him up and they're making some progress, but the equipment's failing and he's slipping back down. And I think he actually slipped down even further, getting more wedge. So finally they change up plans, they get better equipment, and this is already like 15 hours into it. So imagine being stuck upside down for that amount of time. Upon one of the rescuers locating him, his first words was, "I really, really want to get out," which is kind of harrowing. Just
bit
knowing
on the
his
nose.
fate.
Bit on the
Bit
nose.
on-
The guy is like, yeah, I know.
Yeah.
Go on though. I don't know if he's going to survive or not.
Okay. So they have another rescuer that comes, and they're able to pull him out a bit where the rescuer can see his face and doesn't see any kind of problems. Like he seems okay. Like his eyes are all right. He's not bleeding anywhere. But they're having trouble getting him out because from being upside down, the blood has pretty much drained from his legs. His heart is like exerting itself to pump blood. So every time they pull him up, his legs would hit the ceiling of the cave. Like his legs won't bend out that way.
Oh, okay.
So they couldn't pull him over. So basically the option they thought of, they could break his legs and pull him out. But if they did that, he would go into immediate shock and die because the blood would just, I guess, be toxic and descend it through into his heart. So
then they were like, "We're just going to cut you free, and you can live here as. Have you seen The Descent? You'll be one of those guys." Sorry, go on.
Okay, so they're making progress though. They have the best equipment now. They thought about it, they came up with this plan, and they're making progress. And then one of the carabiners came loose and he slid all the way back into the hole. And at this point, he is shifting between calm and coherent and then sheer panic, eventually to the point where he blacked out. And when he came to, he was completely distressed, where he didn't know how he got there, and he thought they put him in there. So he's fading fast. So they got to get him out of there. Well, after 24 hours of being in there, they cannot get him out. He died. And the sad thing is that they were never able to retrieve his body. So he's entombed in there forever.
Field trip.
Well, they sealed off the cave so you can no longer go in there.
Yeah,
but imagine that. Imagine going out for some family fun, never to return, and to die such a horrible, horrible death.
I'm hard as hell.
You're sick. I'm sweating thinking about it. If you see the image, for the people out there, look up the image of John Jones in Nutty Putty Cave. Ooh, that's a hard one to look at. But you know what the funny thing is? There was a 2016 film that came out about the ordeal called The Last Descent. So also a title with descent in it.
They should have called it the Nutty Putty Fuddy Duddy. So the next big scene, they have to cross the divide, and they have to put those, I don't know what you call them, things in there to set the rope.
Carabiners?
I remember I remember the first time I saw this, this scene was really impactful for me.
Well, how so? You ever had the experience something like that?
Well, it was just really suspenseful, and I could imagine, the kind of arm strength to hold yourself up with like one arm. Mm. I used to think, like, when I was a little kid, like, oh man, like if I was ever in a situation like that, I would just find the strength, but I couldn't do that for 5 seconds.
You don't think with adrenaline going, if it was life or death?
With adrenaline going, maybe 7 seconds.
Did you ever see that footage of the hang glider where the harness thing broke and he held on until it landed? It's like recent. It happened. I think it happened maybe this year or last year, but he like tore all the muscles in his arm just holding on, but he didn't even realize that because the adrenaline was kicked in.
Wow.
But once he landed, like he couldn't even move his arms. Crazy. So I'm thinking, like, if your adrenaline's going, you could probably hold yourself up. What's your big fear? Like, what is something that just makes you like, ugh, gives you the heebie-jeebies?
Falling, definitely.
So can you watch
from great heights?
Can you watch the people that do the free climbing?
Yeah, well, because also I'm weirdly like attracted to it. When I was in Australia, the last place I stayed, it was like really high up. It was like 40 stories up, and like you could put your head against the window and like look down. It was kind of like a glass like overhang.
Yeah,
and I could just do that all day. I mean, I could do it off the balcony all day.
But I'm saying, if you were outside that window looking down, where you could fall to your death, would that freak you out? That would freak you the fuck out.
It would freak me. I mean, I'm also just I can't remember if it's a movie or what it is, but I remember someone saying once that fear of heights is fear of jumping, and I totally have that. I just have like an impulse, jump.
There's a that's called something, but I can't think of what that's called.
It's called l'appel du vide in French, and that translates to the call of the void.
Oh, that's right. Yeah.
Which is also what my ex-wife used to call date night. I don't have an ex-wife, just so people know.
Shit, he's not even married.
The funny thing is that so many times, like, a woman will be like, "Oh, and are you divorced? Or you been married before?" And I'll be like, "Why?" Like, no, of course not. What a crazy question. And they're like, "Well, you are 40." I just been hanging out here, man.
Do you ever? That might sound crazy. Do you ever want to say you were divorced, just so it seems like, oh, all right, that explains some things?
Yeah, no, sometimes I do. And they'll say like, oh, it's a personal question, I shouldn't get into it, but like what happened? What went wrong? And I'm like, no, it's fine. I'll tell you, she did not rate and review. Rate and review the podcast.
Yeah. Please.
Now, the next big moment, in a movie like this, you've always got to wound someone early. And it is Holly, right? Who first falls. Now, she's talked about base jumping before. She falls from a great height.
Well, that was because of her own ignorance, where she thought she saw light.
Yes.
But we're at the point where we should mention that they're at this point trapped where Sarah gets through that channel and it collapses.
Oh yeah,
So they have to move forward, and they find out that Juno also sent them to a different location, not the one they planned out, which was more touristy.
Yeah.
Now you would think though that if they're at this new location, they would realize that it's not the right spot, because if it was touristy like they anticipated, there would have been a lot of probably leftover equipment or some markings and stuff, and this was completely unexplored.
Yeah, although I think she just says it's like a different entrance than people
Okay.
usually take, right?
Yeah.
And she also leaves the map behind. You know, she had briefly dated the guy from Blair Witch Project who threw the map away.
Sheer stupidity. It wasn't doing them any good. She didn't even get into the cave. At least if she was in the cave and they were lost, chuck it. But yeah, why do you think she did that? I think she was trying to impress maybe Holly, her protege, possibly a lover.
Was the film Juno based on this film? Anyway,
Did you like Juno though, even though you're not supposed to like her?
yeah,
I liked her
think so.
character. I thought I like that she was brave and stuff. I like that she fucking fought those crawlers and enjoyed it.
Yeah, I felt like she had a good presence too.
Yeah.
I feel I looked her up on IMDb and I was kind of surprised she didn't have more credits in the years that followed.
Yeah, what's her name? Natasha Mendoza, I think I said before.
Yeah, I think so.
I don't know. I think who has the biggest credits of this cast? Is it Shauna McDonald?
Yeah,
Okay.
I think so.
But yeah, so at this point they're completely fucked. They can't get out of the cave, and some panic is setting in. I feel like because Juno makes a series of mistakes in this movie. The one, she lets Holly go, where she falls into the tunnel. The other mistake is when she's trying to collect those carabiners when they're crossing the chasm, and then she like slips and then burns the other girl's hands. Remember, she gets like the
Oh
burn?
yeah, that's such a gnarly wound she has.
Yeah, but I'm thinking like if it's all part of Sarah's delusions, like, and she really has resentment toward Juno, wouldn't Juno be the one fucking up in her like in her delusions? Like, she would want to have that resentment and hatred towards Juno and want to eventually get to the point of killing her. So by her making those mistakes would give her reason to, because nobody else is really fucking up.
True. That's
And
interesting.
Juno is the most experienced, so it doesn't really quite make sense that she would be the inexperienced one.
Yeah, and you feel like with something like this, if you had a lot of experience, you'd be all about like, you know, the caver's code, you know, like
Yeah.
you never leave the map behind and all kinds of stuff like that.
Exactly. So I think I don't know if we're playing that angle, it's reason for Sarah to do what she does. But anyway, so Holly falls down that hole, and what happens to good Holly?
She breaks her leg. Classic of a horror movie of the period, getting that compound fracture.
Mhm.
I feel like there's been more of those in movies than in real life.
Yeah, I remember the big one. Remember that movie, The Program, the football one, where that guy had the career-ending injury. But yeah, I mean, it didn't really play purpose though, because she eventually still got attacked by the crawler. I mean, it was just, I guess, another misfortune for them, right?
Yeah, just things keep getting worse until that big encounter, which is like right around here, when they first get attacked by the crawler.
Did they also assume that they were 2 miles underground?
Yeah, they do mention that.
Yeah, that's fucking scary, man. Imagine you have an emergency and you're 2 miles beneath the surface.
So Rusty, this is the first attack by the crawlers here, or Sarah sees one first.
Yeah,
But
Sarah
this is
sees
like-
the one first. The one wanking off in the corner somewhere.
Yeah. That's a good like creepy moment, but no one
Yeah.
believes her. And then like right around here is a huge. I remember when I saw this in the theater, people screamed at this moment.
Really? Oh, when it just shows up behind one of the characters?
Yeah.
Yeah, that was intense. That was cool.
It was cool, and they really show a lot of restraint in holding them back until I think 45 minutes in or however long it's into the movie.
Yeah.
I don't know if you heard that they just announced a reboot of this,
Oh,
um,
God.
which I'm sure they're not going to wait that long. And also the annoying thing is that it's all male reboot of The Descent
Oh, come on.
with The Rock. Listen to this cast:
No.
The Rock, Kevin Hart, Alexander Skarsgård, Kumail Nanjiani, Jet Li, and Alan Ruck.
When you said Jet Li, now I know you're lying. So you're making me sweat even more there for a second.
On the gossip site, Crazy Days and Nights, and I hopefully no one murder me for saying this. They used to always say that Jet Li was a huge crime lord. And I want to know, was that true?
Well, isn't he messed up now? Doesn't he have some disease?
I think so. Yeah, I read a bit about it. But all of his quotes were all about like love and stuff. Yeah. Maybe that's his cover.
Could be.
Rusty, Halloween's approaching. I might get a shitload of boxes and empty cardboard boxes, and build a network of tunnels in my apartment and charge my neighbors to come into a Descent style Halloween haunt.
That's pretty cool. Would you put like some plaster Paris on the inside so it's like cavernous?
Oh yeah, hugely.
Nice. I like that. How much would you charge?
$58, and I'm gonna have it convertible to a winter theme, so it'll be up through January because I also charge for Christmas.
Oh, Winter Wonderland. I like that.
Winter Wonderland.
That's smart business practice right there. That's how you become successful.
I wonder if there's just like a few kids in my building, and there's some kids around the corner from me on my floor, and I'm positive that family thinks I'm the weirdest fucker on earth. So every year I'm like, will they come to my door for trick or treat? And I get candy, but then no one ever comes.
So you just eat it all?
I eat it all, or I go leave it on the street.
Do you ever find yourself doing stuff that's weird where you're like, I'm doing weird stuff right now?
Do you even listen to this podcast, Rusty?
You know what? With these, what the fuck are they called? Crawlers. They kind of describe them as apex predators, but I can't imagine that when they're so easily defeated.
Yeah.
They don't even use any like kind of planning for their attacks. They just hear a sound and flock to it.
They're a bit like an ugly version of Daredevil without the powers.
Yeah, that's true. Do you think they're all male? They seem like it.
No, they show like a female.
Oh, do they?
Yeah. There's like the moment where you see the female with like the hair mourning over the dead male crawler, and it shows us, it gives us the message that there's somebody for everybody.
Wait, is that true? Because I don't.
Yeah.
Is that in the UK version? I don't remember that.
No, I watched by accident. I watched the US version, and it looks like a witch kind of thing. And it's like crying. It reminded me a lot, not to name drop myself, but it reminded me a lot of the lesson I was trying to communicate back in 1983 when I played the Rancor Keeper in Return of the Jedi.
There is someone for everyone.
Once they encounter the crawlers, it becomes very much like an action-y kind of like, it reminds me of Aliens or something at that point,
Yeah.
It's like
chaos.
It's a series of like people getting killed as they're trying to escape.
If they did a reboot, just backtracking for a second, if they did a reboot, how much backstory do you think they would show of the crawlers? Do you think they would show like 50,000 years ago, like the dawn of them?
Yeah, it's like one caveman is like expelled from his society. And he's like, alone in the cave. But I did think a cool idea for a sequel, do a period sequel. Do like a group of soldiers in the Civil War goes into this cave, and they're Civil War soldiers, and they fight the crawlers. It's like you could do any time period. All you need is new costumes. I'm going to set every film moving forward in a cave. Or do it futuristic. It could be Star Trek. It could be like a Star Trek episode.
What about Star Wars?
These crawlers would be no match for a Jedi. They'd be slicing through them like they slice through Trade Federation droids.
The interesting thing that we didn't mention is that the cast didn't get to see the crawlers until they filmed that scene. So
that's true.
They wanted their initial reactions, much like the Wonka kids or the Goonies kids, but instead the cast ran away in fear. So they didn't get to do it that way.
And one of the actors playing the crawler started crying. Was like, "I'm ugly." And that actually reminds me as well that the crawlers were all played by actors instead of stunt people.
Yeah.
Because Neil Marshall wanted them to bring like a more of a performance to matters.
I feel like a stunt person could have done the same, but
Me too. I was actually I got a little pissed off. I wrote an email to Neil Marshall.
Strongly worded, I hope.
Yes, but then it ended. And can I still have your dog?
Did he even knew of you, or he just knew that some dude was going to take his dog?
I think he did not know that a guy even considered taking his dog.
Oh, okay.
So much like Sarah, this is all in my freaking head.
But anyway, so the crawlers are killing everyone at this point. Or they kill Holly first, tear her up.
We as soon as we saw Holly, we're like, oh, she's the first one to go.
I do like that scene though, where the crawler is trying to pull the body back to, I guess, their den, and Juno is like pulling the body the other way, and there's like a bit of tug of war over this body.
Mm-hmm.
It's a cool moment. That's all I got. But we find out that Juno, in the moment of excitement, also kills Beth by accident.
Oh yeah, this is another moment that I remember the first time I saw it in the theater, and I was like,
although it's I don't know, there wasn't enough of connection built with a lot of the characters. Like when Beth got killed, it's like, okay, I get it. Like wasn't like sad. Half the time I didn't know. And that lighting with the flares, I couldn't even tell which character was which.
Yeah, that does get a little confusing.
They all
and
have the same look.
It strains a tiny bit of credibility that Juno gets like that thing all the way coming out her throat, but you know, whatever.
I like it. Initially, they tried to differentiate between the women by giving them different hats to wear, but they lose the hats. And it's just like, who's who? Cannot tell. Yeah, so the girls kind of all get separated because of the crawlers. So Sarah kind of stumbles. What does she do? She falls, right, and like knocks herself out.
Yeah, Sarah ends up kind of apart from everyone for a little bit.
So how would you explain that moment when the crawler appears and frightens everyone? If it's Sarah killing everyone, how could we possibly explain that scene? Is it just because they are stuck in the pitch black and it's part of her imagination, or?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, I think if it's all her imagination, it's pretty flexible.
Yeah, that's true. How come the crawlers' heads, is it an evolutionary thing that their heads are so squishy? Like you could actually push on their heads. Like it has like the density of a mad ball.
It has the density of a mad ball. How many scientific papers have I read that same line in? Well, I think if you're crawling through tunnels, that actually makes sense to have like a soft head, you know?
Oh yeah, that's true. But another theory of mine is, or another thing I read, I can't say it's mine because I did read it. The pool of blood that Sarah falls into, cool effect, but it's not really plausible. Why would the crawlers have a pool of blood?
Well, you know what they say, Rusty. The crocodile mile has to end somewhere.
Oh, so it's a game for them. I like that.
Yeah. Trying to keep our references so only people 35 and above can get this podcast.
That sounds about right.
Did you ever have a slip and slide or a crocodile mile?
No. Obviously, friends had it, which I got to experience all of them, all the ones they came out with.
I always wanted them, and no one let me on their slip and slides.
So to this day,
one time I tried to make them with like garbage bags. Did you ever do that with like when you tried to do like the fake ones?
Yeah, you put like soapy dishwater on it.
Ugh, never worked.
Yeah, they were fun, but the original slip and slide didn't have like the pool like Crocodile Mile, so you would just go into grass and get the grass burns. I'm sure those go up for a lot on eBay, right? The original slip and slide. I mean, we got to get you one.
Yeah, that's true. Oh my God. I probably have room in here. I could probably have it going into my bathroom. My downstairs neighbor's like, I'm hearing a really weird noise lately. It sounds, and it's going to sound crazy, but it sounds like someone going on a slip and slide. Like, oh no, it's actually a Crocodile Mile.
I think people like at our age make like epic slip and slides that have turns and stuff that will end up in like a lake. We should do that.
Dude, in my dream world, that would be the form of transit to get around the city.
You should pitch that.
That's all I'm asking for.
Get elected mayor. That's your platform. I will transform.
Well, he's moved on from Where Is My Baby, but I'm not sure this is the greatest platform for a politician. Anyway.
Do you think when they discovered the cave paintings, do you think that's to say that the crawlers are, some kind of humanoids that maybe like prehistoric man that didn't evolve, and that was that
Oh yeah,
symptom?
yeah. I think that's the idea that they
So,
became isolated in the caves.
so did they They didn't de-evolve because obviously, like they're at a point where they need to be. But why would you lose the ability to draw and stuff and have some kind of language? All they do is do clicks now. Is that all they need? I guess when you're stuck in those
Well,
caves.
no, yeah, they evolved into something else. I think that's totally plausible.
How did
You know
they
what
get
would be a great, be a great prank, just to totally
Yes.
go off topic. A great prank. If I ever knew someone who was going into a cave system like an isolated cave system,
Mhm.
I would go to the exit, like while they were in the cave, and I'd hire like a bunch of Chinese actors and set up like some like Chinese looking houses. And then when they came out the other side, try to convince them that they had gone all the way through the world and ended up in China.
What kind of idiot would you have with these people?
Well, they're not going to imagine that I hired 30 extras, 30 Chinese extras.
That's true. How did they develop the ability to cling to the walls where they could come down from the ceilings?
That's another, I mean,
Evolutionary
yeah.
develop.
You believe it when a kid is bitten by a spider, but not when a population is isolated for tens of thousands of years.
Why even still have eyes? Actually, wouldn't they develop better eyesight that they could see in the dark? Why would bats still see? They live in darkness.
Well, I think, don't bats blind as a bat?
That's an urban legend. Bats have, I think, poor eyesight, but they have eyesight. They still see. All right, so we get to a point. Sarah and Juno still alive. They're fighting all these crawlers, hundreds of them, maybe like dozens of them, dismantling them. And then Sarah betrays Juno, discovers that Juno was the one that killed Beth, which that's quite the jump. That's quite the conclusion to make, because she found the necklace on Beth.
Oh, about the husband affair being revealed by that.
She put everything together when she had like a brief conversation with Beth, and then found the necklace that she pulled off of Juno. She put it all together, and then she like she does stabs her in the kneecap.
I think when she does, she like uses like the pickaxe thing and like hits her in the leg, but leaves the pickaxe like embedded in her leg. It's almost like she does that as like a on the one hand, it's like a dick thing because it's like she's leaving her there to be killed by the creatures, but she's also like, I'll leave you with a weapon.
Yeah, if you get out, then you earned it.
Exactly.
But then, like, I forgot. Sarah falls again. Does she fall down a hole or slides down something? And then she's like all of a sudden by the exit, which doesn't really make sense.
Yeah. Well, I think it makes sense because it's like she's getting hit by daylight, and you see the way the daylight is coming in down this like diagonal path.
Yeah, but she like was passed out for a second, and then she opens her eyes and sees the daylight. So,
well, this is all about like where it's shifting into the dream ending or not, depending on your take on it.
She's in the hospital, man. She's still in that hospital. But yeah, she crawls through a pit of bones and comes out clean on the other side.
Yeah, and also I don't know if we mentioned that the cave paintings they see earlier show that there's an exit.
Yeah. Yeah, I feel like the way she emerged though would that really be how the other exit is? But whatever. I do like.
Well, it's like it's a good visual. It's like she's being born again.
Yeah. Just to sum up the ending, what do you want to do? The U.S. ending or UK ending?
Well, I mean, she's like running through the forest, screaming. I don't know. You really feel for her here. She gets to the Jeep. She's driving away, and she pulls over, and has a sudden moment where she sees like the ghost of Juno. Right? Is that?
Yeah, well, she pulls over and throws up first, and then she's like startled by the truck that passes, and then she sees the ghost of Juno, and then that's where it ends for the U.S. version,
which is so. Besides the fact that it's shitty, and cheap, it's so abrupt that I was like, "Whoa, the movie ended? What?" Like,
yeah, and then it shows the photo of all of them beforehand.
Yeah. Also, because I wasn't, I thought I had the British version that I was watching, and so when that happened, I was like so startled.
Yeah, I made that mistake too. And then so the UK version,
The UK version, right after that scare, she wakes up and we realize the ghost and the escape was like a dream.
Yeah.
And she's still in the cave. And she sees the hallucination of her daughter with the birthday cake. And she's seen this imagery throughout the film since even before being in the cave, which supports the whole thing that she never left the hospital.
Right.
And as she's doing this, we're like pulling out to this kind of vast shot, and we hear, although I always remember that you see them closing in, but you just hear the sounds of crawlers all around her.
Yeah. Which I think is a cool ending.
Oh, it's a great ending. I also forgot the one like weird shot in the movie. Oh, two weird shots in the movie. But when Juno is like her final shot, when she's facing down the crawlers and they're coming on like four sides at her, that shot looks like really fake. Like they look like composited in as if it's like Ray Harryhausen looking. Like
you know what else looks like that too? When the bats come out.
Yes, yeah. The bats are so weirdly digital. It's like don't even need bats.
Yeah. Do you notice at that moment Sarah also finds like the claw mark on the cave or the blood smear? It's only her that sees it, so I think she starts hallucinating pretty early on, unless it's could be real, but nobody else saw anything except her.
There's a great. Did you see the crew member in the thing?
No, I did not.
This is really mind blowing. I think it is like I'm trying to remember where. I mean, if you look at IMDb, it says where it is, but it's when one of the characters, I think maybe Juno, first lights a flare, and it's like a red flare. Like it's pretty early in the movie, and she's standing on like. So all the sets, it was all done on sets. At first, they thought like they were actually going to shoot in a cave, which I'm sure would have been a fucking nightmare.
Oh yeah.
And so there's just like a window. There's like an opening in the set, and you just see like a normal looking guy in like a lit up room, and it's so crazy because once you see it, you'll never not see it.
I gotta look at that.
But yeah, that's an amazing moment.
You know, it's got to be funny though with the ending. Say if Sarah. Because I'm just bringing the sequel into this, even though that's not canon, but if she did escape and made it home, imagine trying to explain that to the police.
Oh yeah.
It's like,
I always want to make like just a series of videos that's like explaining to the police after the film.
Yeah. Like Predator. Remember we talked about with Arnold?
Oh yeah. Yeah.
It's like, imagine trying to tell the police what happened. Jeez. You know, it's funny. Like trying to you had difficulty trying to convince a bunch of fourth graders that you were a werewolf, and like fourth graders are gullible. Imagine that trying to explain to police that all my friends are dead by these humanoid-like creatures dwelling in a cave.
I mean, I bet if they did like a reboot of this, we'd see the town where like the nearby town, and if these things are escaping, there's got to be like some lore where the people are like, it's like the mayor's secretly in league with the crawlers.
Yeah.
Man, I mean, after you've been through the accident and then this ordeal after that, I don't know what kind of future she would have.
Maybe I'll normal her out. Maybe two tragedies makes it right.
I'd just be like, I guess I'll just get into heroin or something. Rusty, do you think now after the ending, do you think that Sarah is still alive, or do you think she got killed immediately? Not counting the sequel, just in when you watch the film, what do you think?
Well, I think she's the one that killed her friends, but if I'm taking the ending into consideration, I'm saying she died in the cave.
Yeah, like pretty soon after that, I think.
Right, yeah.
And well, that's The Descent. That's The Descent. Rusty, back in 2005, you know, this story of these subterranean creatures was unrealistic. And now they're running the country.